Picture yourself sitting across from someone you have known your entire life, a parent, a partner, a friend you trusted completely. And suddenly, mid-conversation, something shifts, their eyes go cold, their voice changes tone, and for just a moment, just a flicker, you see something looking back at you that is not them. You have felt this before. That sudden drop in your stomach, that animal instinct screaming danger, even though nothing overtly threatening has happened. That immediate knowing that whoever is wearing that familiar face has temporarily vacated the building. The Gnostics had a word for what you witnessed in that moment. They called it archonic possession. And Jesus, in his private teachings to the elect, gave a single diagnostic question that will reveal whether someone was under archonic influence or not. This question was never written in the canonical Gospels. It was too dangerous, too revealing, too capable of dismantling the entire power structure that would rise after his death. But it was preserved, hidden in fragments, coded in parables, whispered between initiates who understood that some knowledge must be protected until the generation arrives that is ready to wield it. That generation is you, right now. If you're feeling a pull toward this teaching, if something in your chest tightened when I mentioned that cold recognition in someone's eyes, subscribe to this channel immediately, because what you are about to learn goes beyond discernment. This is spiritual warfare intelligence that has been kept from humanity for 2,000 years. Comment the words, "I see them" right now. This is your acknowledgement that you are not here by accident, that you have encountered what I am describing, and that you are ready to understand what you have been sensing your entire life. Take a slow breath, in through your nose, out through your mouth. What I am about to share is not entertainment. This is operational gnosis. Let us begin with what the Archons actually are, because until you understand their nature, you cannot understand why this question works. In the Apocryphon of John, discovered in the Nag Hammadi Library in 1945, there is a detailed cosmology that describes the structure of reality. At the top exists a monad, the true source, pure consciousness beyond form. Below that exists the pleroma, the realm of divine emanations and light. And below that exists our world, the material realm, created not by the monad but by a lesser being called the demiurge. The demiurge is a false god, the architect of matter, the one who looked at his own creation and declared, "I am God, and there is no other." His arrogance was his defining characteristic. He genuinely believed he was supreme, not realizing he himself was an emanation from something far greater. To maintain control of the material realm, the demiurge created servants, the archons. These are non-physical entities that exist at frequencies just beyond normal human perception. They are the rulers, the authorities, the administrators of the prison reality. But here is what most people do not understand about archons. They do not have what you have. They were never born from the monad. They have no divine spark. They are artificial constructs, thought forms given animation by the demiurge, programs designed to keep humanity locked in low-frequency states. And because they lack the divine spark, they are fascinated by it, obsessed with it. They are drawn to humans who carry light like moths to flame, not to extinguish it, but to feed on it, to experience it secondhand, to wear it like stolen clothing. This is where possession comes in. Archons cannot incarnate. They have no bodies of their own, but they can influence, they can overshadow, and under certain conditions, they can temporarily inhabit a human being, riding in the passenger seat of someone else's consciousness. This does not look like Hollywood exorcism. There is no head spinning, no projectile vomiting. Archonic influence is far more subtle and far more common than you have been led to believe. It appears as sudden personality shifts, uncharacteristic cruelty, a blank quality behind the eyes, a repeating of talking points that sound scripted, an inability to engage in original thought, a mechanical quality to responses, an absence of empathy that seems to come and go. You have seen this. Maybe in a boss who seemed human one day and reptilian the next. Maybe in a family member whose warmth disappeared during certain conversations. Maybe in a crowd, when individual faces blurred into a single mass consciousness that felt distinctly predatory. Jesus understood this phenomenon intimately. He spoke about it in metaphor to masses, but in private, he gave his disciples the tools to identify and neutralize archontic interference. And the most powerful tool was a single question. But before I give you that question, you need to understand why it works. Because this is not magic. This is technology. Spiritual technology that operates according to precise laws. The Archons have one vulnerability, one fatal flaw built into their programming that they cannot overcome. They cannot create. They can only imitate. They can copy. They can remix. They can distort. They can invert. But they cannot generate anything original because originality requires connection to source, and they have no such connection. This is why every archonic system eventually cannibalizes itself. This is why their art feels empty. This is why their solutions create more problems. This is why their empires always collapse. They are running on borrowed energy, stolen light, secondhand consciousness. When an archon is influencing a human being, that human temporarily loses access to their creative capacity. They become reactive instead of generative. They fall into binary thinking. They lose nuance. They cannot imagine solutions outside the existing framework. They can only defend, attack, repeat, and destroy. And this is precisely what Jesus' question exploits. In the Gospel of Thomas, saying 50, there's a cryptic passage that scholars have debated for decades. Jesus says, "If they say to you, 'Where have you come from?' say to them, 'We have come from the light, from the place where the light came into being by itself, established itself, and appeared in their image.' If they say to you, 'Is it you?' say, 'We are its children, and we are the chosen of the living Father.'" On the surface, this seems like metaphysical philosophy, but the Gnostics understood it as a literal protocol, a verbal code that triggers a specific response pattern. Jesus was teaching his disciples how to identify archonic entities by asking them about origin, not physical origin, spiritual origin, not where they were born, where they came from before birth. This is a question, what existed before you were aware of existing? Read that again slowly. What existed before you were aware of existing? This question is devastatingly simple and impossibly complex, and the response reveals everything. A human being connected to their divine spark will pause. They will go inward. They will access something beyond memory, beyond thought, beyond the rational mind, and they will describe, in their own words, a sense of source, of presence, of light, of consciousness prior to form. They might say, "I do not know, but I sense something." They might say, "There was awareness before I was aware of being aware." They might struggle to articulate it, but you will feel the realness of their search. You will sense them reaching for something true. But an archonic entity or a human under archonic influence cannot do this. They will respond in one of four ways, and these patterns are consistent across cultures, across languages, across centuries. Pattern one is deflection. They will immediately change the subject. They will make a joke. They will dismiss the question as nonsense. They will refuse to engage. This is because the question itself causes a system error. The Archon cannot compute what is being asked because it has no reference point for consciousness prior to form. Pattern 2 is script repetition. They will respond with a programmed answer, usually religious dogma or materialist ideology. God created me. Nothing existed before my brain formed. That question is meaningless. These answers sound confident, but they are borrowed. They lack the searching quality that characterizes a genuine human response. Pattern 3 is aggression. The question will make them angry, sometimes disproportionately so. They will accuse you of playing games. They will become hostile. This is the Archon recognizing a threat. The question is a probe, and the entity knows it. Pattern 4 is the most chilling. Emptiness. They will look at you with blank eyes and say, "I do not understand the question," not as confusion, but as a statement of incapacity. The lights are on, but nobody is home. You are speaking to the shell, and the shell has no answer. Now, let me be very clear about something. This question is not a weapon to attack people you dislike. This is not a tool for judgment or superiority. This is a diagnostic for discernment, and discernment requires responsibility. Just because someone exhibits archonic patterns does not mean they are permanently possessed. Archonic influence fluctuates. It comes and goes. A human being can be under archonic overshadowing during a fearful moment, during exhaustion, during extreme stress, and return to themselves when conditions change. Your task is not to condemn. Your task is to recognize. Because once you recognize archontic influence, you stop taking it personally. You stop arguing with it. You stop trying to reason with something that cannot reason. Place your hand on your chest right now. Feel your heartbeat. That rhythm is yours. But the consciousness witnessing the heartbeat, the awareness that knows you're alive, that is not generated by your body, that is your connection to the monad, the divine spark that archons do not possess. This is why the question works. It forces the entity to acknowledge what it does not have. Let me take you deeper into how Jesus used this in practice. In the Pistis Sophia, one of the most detailed Gnostic texts ever recovered, there is an account of Jesus encountering a group of individuals who appeared human, but whose responses disturbed his disciples. They spoke eloquently. They quoted scripture. They seemed knowledgeable, but something was wrong. Jesus asked them, not publicly but in private, "Tell me of the silence before sound." This is a variation of the same diagnostic. The question points toward pre-manifestation consciousness, toward the state before individuation, toward the monad itself. The individuals could not answer. They became confused, then angry, then they left. And Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "You have just witnessed the rulers. They can imitate the word, but they cannot access the silence for which the word emerges." This teaching was never meant for the masses, because the masses were not ready. Even now, most people would dismiss this as superstition. But you are not most people. You have seen the emptiness behind certain eyes. You have felt the coldness that descends when something else is driving the conversation. And now you have the question that reveals it. But I need to warn you, once you start using this question, your life will change. You will lose relationships. Not because the question pushes people away, but because you will finally see who was never really there. You will recognize archontic influence in places you trusted. You will see the emptiness in systems you were taught to obey. You'll understand why certain people drain you while others energize you. This is not paranoia. This is perception. And perception without grounding is dangerous. So here's a protection protocol Jesus gave alongside the question. Step 1. Establish your origin daily. Every morning, before you engage with the world, ask yourself the question, what existed before I was aware of existing? Sit with it. Feel for the answer. This practice keeps you anchored in your divine spark and makes you invisible to archontic interference. Step 2. Do not announce what you see. When you recognize archonic influence in someone, do not confront them directly. Do not try to wake them up. Do not argue. Simply withdraw your energy. The archons feed on reaction. Your silence starves them. Step 3. Surround yourself with those who can answer. This is how you build your true tribe, not through shared hobbies or superficial compatibility, but through shared origin. When you meet someone who can genuinely engage with the question, who can reach for the silence before sound, you have found a pneumatic, a fellow chosen one. These are your people. The teaching you have just received is not merely an esoteric concept. It is an activation sequence. The knowledge itself is a key, but the true power lies in its application, which is a continual process of self-refinement and environmental calibration. The archons are not defeated by fire and brimstone. They are neutralized by impeccable alignment and the unwavering light of a stable human consciousness. Consider the nature of their deception. Their entire structure is based on mimicry. They mimic thought, creating intrusive, looping, fearful narratives that appear to be your own. They mimic desire, engineering appetites for consumption, distraction, and conflict. They mimic spirituality itself, inventing religions, dogma, and political systems that promise liberation while ensuring deeper enslavement. They are masters of the double bind, the paradox that locks the mind in perpetual contradiction. To wield the question, you must first master your own inner landscape, because the primary battlefield is not the person sitting across from you, but the fear within your own chest. Archonic entities use fear as their transmission medium. When you are operating from a place of fear, fear of not being enough, fear of loss, fear of chaos, you drop your energetic shield and become a receptive antenna for their influence. Your own anxiety becomes their open channel. Therefore, the practice of asking yourself, what existed before I was aware of existing, is not just a daily ritual. It is the establishment of an internal baseline frequency. When you touch that inner silence, that pre-manifestation state of pure awareness, you are effectively grounding yourself in the monad. You are declaring your allegiance not to the temporal, chaotic world of the demiurge, but to the eternal source. This grounding makes the archonic noise, the worry, the compulsion, the sudden urge to attack or defend, sound like the static it is. The freedom that this question unlocks is the freedom from emotional coercion. Once you recognize that the disproportionate anger, the programmed deflection, or the chilling emptiness in another person is not them, but a program running through them, you gain an immense strategic advantage. You cease feeding the drama. You stop providing the emotional energy, the frustration, the outrage, the hurt that the Archon uses as fuel. You simply observe the failed connection. Imagine the Archon as a virus in a computer program. The host body, the human, is a computer. The question, what existed before you were aware of existing, is a specific command that the virus-ridden operating system cannot execute. When a clean, uncorrupted part of the system, the genuine human spirit, is prompted, it accesses the deep-root files, the monad connection. When the virus is active, the program either crashes, aggression/deflection, or outputs a default error message, script repetition/emptiness. Your realization of this error message is your protection. This level of discernment fundamentally changes your engagement with the world's major systems. You begin to see the archonic patterns not just in individuals, but in the collective consciousness. The perpetual cycles of war, the endless debates over fundamentally meaningless distinctions, the celebration of profane, the systemic inversion of truth, beauty, and goodness. These are the visible manifestations of archonic programming on a global scale. These systems cannot create solutions. They can only perpetuate the problem, guaranteeing a consistent supply of fear, anxiety, and reactive energy. When you look at history through this lens, it ceases to be a random series of events and becomes a clear, repeated pattern of containment. Every spiritual revolution, every moment of genuine human flourishing, has been followed by an archonic counter-movement designed to co-opt, corrupt, and ultimately invert the original teaching. Jesus' teaching itself was immediately subject to this inversion, with the question hidden and the power structure of external salvation substituted for the internal gnosis. Your task is to hold the original frequency. This is why step 2, do not announce what you see, is critical. The Archon system is designed to turn your knowledge against you. If you confront the infected person, they will react with rage and shame, but the Archon will immediately recognize you as a threat and tag you for targeting. Your confrontation does not liberate them. It only empowers the entity by giving it your focused attention and high-frequency energy. You become a martyr, not a master. Withdrawal is not cowardice, it is strategic wisdom. You conserve your energy for the true work of creation, rather than the futile work of argument. The true work of the pneumatic, the one who possesses gnosis, is to become a silent beacon. Your power is your vibrational state. When you are consistently anchored in your origin, you become an energetic anomaly in the archontic matrix. Your presence alone destabilizes the surrounding darkness. You do not need to fight it. You merely need to exist as yourself, pure and uncompromised. The Archons have no defense against a human being who has realized they are not the body, not the mind, and not the drama, but the eternal witness. The establishment of your true tribe, step 3, is the building of a protective field. When you gather with others who have genuinely accessed the silence before sound, you create a resonance chamber. The collective light of aligned consciousness is exponentially more powerful than any individual spark. This tribe is not a retreat from the world, but a refueling station where you recalibrate, share operational gnosis, and reinforce your commitment to your true origin. This is the new pleroma, the community of light within the prison reality. This journey requires profound courage, not the physical courage of battle, but the spiritual courage to stand alone in your perception. The temptation will be to fall back into the comforting noise, to doubt the clarity of your own sight, to excuse the archonic patterns as mere human failing. You must resist this temptation. You must honor what your inner knowing reveals, even when the entire world tells you that you are wrong. The question, simple as it is the thread that leads you out of the labyrinth. When you recognize the answer or the lack thereof, you recognize the boundary between the living and the mechanical, between the created and the artificial. The permanent freedom is knowing that you possess a consciousness that predates the cosmos you inhabit. A consciousness the rulers of this realm can only envy, never touch. Ask the question, anchor in the answer, and walk in the silent, powerful recognition of your true self. If you are ready to integrate this teaching, comment, "I am from the light below." Let other chosen ones see your declaration. Let the algorithm know this information must spread. The question is simple. The implications are vast, and the freedom it brings is permanent. You came into this world carrying something the Archons cannot touch. And now you have the tool to recognize when you are standing in front of something that never came from the light at all. One question, infinite protection. This is what Jesus taught to those he trusted most. And now, 2,000 years later, you carry it too.